Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a really fiery sermon that was delivered back in December 1994 by the leader of a major new religious movement in Japan. Now, this was his last big speech of the year, and let me tell you, he used it to paint a very, very clear and pretty stark vision for the future.
So he kicks things off not with some message of peace and harmony, but with a full-on declaration of war. He basically tells his followers, look, the world is a battleground, and we are in a fight against two very specific, very powerful evils that are twisting Japanese society.
Okay, so you have to be wondering, right? Who are these two devils? What did he mean by that? Well, let's dive in and unpack this, because the answers he gave were aimed squarely at some of the most powerful institutions in the entire country. So the first devil he points to, it wasn't some kind of supernatural demon hiding in the shadows. Nope. He said it was living right out in the open, operating at the very heart of the Japanese mass media. And he wasn't vague about it at all. He got really specific, zeroing in on three cultural trends that he saw as just deeply corrosive. He's talking about the decay of sexual morality, the way death was being romanticized, and even the medical definition of life itself. He believed all this stuff was pushing society in what he literally called a hell-bound direction.
First up on his list was the explosion of explicit content in magazines and media. He argued that all this talk about freedom of expression was really just freedom to fall into what he called a lust hell. A very specific destination in the afterlife, by the way, for people who live by pure instinct, more like animals, without that essential human emotion of shame.
Next, he pivoted to how the media was covering suicide, especially among young people. He absolutely condemned the way victims were portrayed as these tragic heroes. For him, suicide was a cowardly act, a total desertion from the spiritual training that life is supposed to be, and he believed glorifying it would only encourage more people to go down that same dark road.
Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting. His critique of the media suddenly connects to this deep theological argument about what it even means to be alive or dead. And this was the key to his third big point: organ transplants. Here it is, the core of his argument. The whole medical concept of brain death, in his worldview, was basically a fiction made up by doctors. He preached that a person is only truly dead when their soul completely leaves the body, which, he said, could take hours. So think about it. Taking organs from a patient who is brain dead wasn't a life-saving procedure. In his view, it was straight-up murder.
Okay, let's get to the second devil. So if the media was one huge enemy, the other one was, and I'm quoting here, the greatest and worst of them all. And where did he say it was? Hiding inside the world of religion itself. He did not mince words here. He singled out one of Japan's biggest new religious movements, Soka Gakkai, and slapped them with the label Jakyo, an evil religion. Then he makes this stunning accusation, blaming them and them alone for all the negative press and public suspicion that every other new religion had to deal with in Japan.
But he says, look, this isn't just some modern-day rivalry. To really understand what's wrong with Soka Gakkai, you've got to go back, way back, 700 years to be exact, to the teachings of a 13th century monk named Nichiren, who they trace their traditions back to. And he hones right in on the absolute central practice of Nichiren Buddhism, chanting the phrase Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. He poses this question directly, like he's throwing down a gauntlet to his audience and really to every follower of Soka Gakkai. He frames this as the fundamental mistake, the core theological error. Is it really that simple? Can just repeating words over and over, no matter how much you mean it, actually get you to salvation? Well, his answer was a very loud, very detailed no. And this was his whole point. The chant itself is just a declaration. It means, I take refuge in the correct teaching. But he argued, if you don't actually know what that teaching is, the laws of cause and effect, the Eightfold Path, and more importantly, if you don't practice it, then the words are just empty. They're meaningless. And salvation? Impossible. So here's where this 700-year-old religious argument suddenly crashes right into the middle of 1990s Japanese politics. In his mind, this spiritual war had become a political one. The speaker takes direct aim at a politician named Ichiro Ozawa, who was this huge, disruptive force in politics at the time. And what was Ozawa's great sin? He had formed a political coalition with Komeito, which just so happens to be the political party founded by Soka Gakkai. And then, he makes this absolutely extraordinary claim.
He flat out declares that Ichiro Ozawa is the reincarnation of a figure from ancient Buddhist scriptures, a king by the name of Ajase.
This really gives you a window into how he saw the world. See, according to the scriptures, King Ajasera had the worst karma imaginable. He killed his own father to steal the throne. So the speaker draws this direct line, accusing Ozawa of metaphorically killing his own political father, the ruling party he had just left, all to grab power for himself. Wow, so this wasn't just a political disagreement. This was a spiritual prophecy. He issues a direct warning, a curse almost, telling Ozawa that making a deal with an evil religion was a karmic act that would literally condemn his soul to hell. So after all that, what's the big takeaway for his followers? You're facing these huge devils in the media and in politics, so what do? Well, the sermon shifts from diagnosing the problem to giving a direct order. And his command was simple, totally political, and absolutely clear. He told them to use their vote like a spiritual weapon. Step 1, figure out which candidates are backed by Soka Gakkai. Step 2, make sure that not a single person in your entire network, your family, your friends, anyone you know, casts a single vote for them. And this right here really gets to the heart of his entire message. For him, life on Earth was not supposed to be some passive, quiet meditation. It was an active, constant struggle. He believed the whole reason we're here, the purpose of human existence, is this eternal challenge, to fight evil with both the right beliefs and very real, concrete actions. So what is the correct faith you need for this battle? He defined it as Sanpo Kie, taking refuge in the 3 treasures. But, and this is a big but, he was very specific that the true Buddha, the true Dhamma or teachings, and the true Sangha or community were the ones found inside his own movement. He positioned it as the only real defense against the devils he'd been talking about. You know, this sermon from 1994 is just such a powerful piece of history. It lays out this worldview where media, religion, and politics aren't separate things at all. They're all just one big battlefield in a spiritual war. And it leaves us with this really critical question. When you frame the world as a fight against absolute evil, when you erase those lines between the sacred and the secular, what kinds of actions become possible? What becomes justified?